How's it going, everybody? This is another mix session by me, Dowden, and in this one I am going to be mixing down the first mix of a track that I've been working on. I'm about 85–90% done writing the track. I like to actually do a first mix down, even if it's pretty rough, before the final touches of a track, because I feel like if there's something missing or there's too much of one area or the arrangement is interfering with itself, this is a great time to identify that within the mix, and then I can fix it before I am doing all these fine tunings and have the mix completely done or have the track completely done, and then come to the mix and then have to change the track. Just makes it easier for me. I've already went through and I've turned down all the channels except these three. I'm going to turn these down now. And you'll notice that I didn't turn down the tracks all the way, and that is because when we're playing the track, you'll see that it shows the signals here. And if you turn this all the way down, it won't actually show the signal. And that is just so I know for sure that there's something there. Sometimes I'll turn tracks down, especially when I have lots of tracks. I don't really have, I have actually quite a low amount of tracks in this track, in this song. And that's okay too. Sometimes more simple tracks are, you know, they don't have to be complicated to be a good track. And luckily I really enjoyed creating this track. It flowed really nicely and I didn't really need to put a lot of tracks. So it's going to make it much easier to mix. But anyways, so I put this up so that I can see if there's signal, because if it goes down there, I might forget to actually adjust this fader. And then I might forget elements until later on in the mix, and I have to go back and adjust things. So, also I have my master pushed up a little bit, and I also have a limiter with a gain pushed up a little bit. And the reason for that is because I like to push the volume up a little bit more so that when I'm done my mix and I'm hitting -6 decibels of gain, or of headroom, sorry, if I'm hitting -6 decibels of headroom, I can then turn down my master and turn down my limiter, and I've even added a bit extra headroom. And this is also good because if I get a really nice sounding mix, but then I look at my master and it's hitting a maybe -3, -4, then I can just turn down the gain back down. It's just a way that I can ensure that I'm not going to be hitting over negative, because it's already pushing it up a few decibels. So if I can retain -6 with it being pushed a little bit, and then I can give myself that little extra wiggle room to push something a little bit louder if need be, but it's just a general guideline that helps me mix. And I think that's it. Oh, last, I like to mix in mono, especially when I first start mixing, so that I can really create a mix that is going to fit well together, and I don't rely on panning to make room for instruments. I rely on precision EQ and arrangement, etc. And then once you take it out of mono, it sounds way, way different in a great way. It usually sounds way better as long as you don't have, you know, some sort of stereo issues, but you should be adjusting that in the mono mix anyways. Okay, so let's get started. I've already started on the kick and bass. I have an EQ on so that I can only hear the low end, and then I'm going to tune in the bass to the kick. I like to have my kick hitting around -16 when I start. It's just a general rule of thumb that I like to go by, and then I mix to that. Let's turn up my bass. And I am actually wearing a sub pack, so it's great if you don't know what a sub pack is. It's like it's a wearable, essentially a wearable sub, and you wear it on your body and you can feel the bass response. And it's actually really, really helpful, especially when you live in a condo like I do, or when you're traveling and you don't have good speakers. Let's go to my bass channel here. I have, where is it? Or it might be my kick. Yeah, okay. That's a really low frequency. It's like 29 or 30 hertz. So I'm gonna just have this super quiet. And my kick is pretty punchy, so I'm not too worried about the sub interfering too much, but it is also a pretty subby kick, so I'm not going to introduce too much of that really low sub because I'm going to have that kick interfering with it. So I'm just going to introduce just a little bit of it so it doesn't lose that weight over large systems, but it's very subtle, very, very subtle. Okay, great. That sounds pretty good. Maybe a little bit quieter. Okay. Next, I'm going to just start to open up that EQ a little bit. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. Turn this off, just hear the bass and kick. Definitely compressed as well. I'm probably gonna leave that to the end, just because I want to make sure the levels are okay, but yeah, I'll do that after. Okay, next, let's start to focus on the drums. So then I like to keep my kick and the drums, but what I do next for all my mixes is I'll actually take out the low end of the track. The reason for that is because I don't want that low end influencing what I'm doing to the mid or the high end of the track. So I have my sub pack on. I'm going to take out the sub so I can still feel that punchiness of the kick and this low bass. Whoops. But it's not influencing it's not shaking my body. It's not creating, it's not pushing my speakers in a way that's affecting them in the sub. It's just giving me a little bit more ear room to focus on the mids and the highs. That's pretty good there. Gonna have to go in later with some EQ and make sure those aren't interfering too much with each other. As well as these. Just making sure my kick is mono there. So this should be routed. I quickly wanted to explain, I have my routing set like this. So I have my kick, my sidechain is all my synths. So all the synths are going into the sidechain. Then I have my drum bus, which is all my drums except for the kick. And then I have a bass bus. And then usually at the end, I'll add a kick and bass bus as well once I'm done. And then I'll put that to the master. So this bongo is actually routed to the master. So I'm going to route that into the drum bus and make sure everything else is routed properly. So this one is not. That's definitely why we were hearing that much louder before. Why I thought I needed to compress it so much. This one goes to the sidechain because it's a synth. And I think that's it. Yeah, okay. And then I have my sends and returns over here, or my return tracks. Turn this back on. They definitely need to be louder, so I'm gonna push these a little bit louder. Okay, try that for now. What else do we have next? Might split up these percussive elements a bit more. Okay, let's hear that without the kick being taken away. Sounds pretty good. Okay, let's move on to some of our synths right now. So the first one that gets introduced is a pad, I believe, or it's these vocals here. Let's just hear the pattern. Okay, so I have this pad. Let's hear that in the context of the track. I'm going to turn off the other ones. And I'm going to cut that out a little bit more because we don't need it as loud. Nice, but there, the synth here. I'm going to route this to a different one. Where is it here? This one. Should be routed to a new one. Move that over. Route that to the side chain, which is the synth, and let's call this one hook saw wave. I'm going to leave that out for now because I don't know if I'm actually going to leave that in the track. And move this closer to the bass because I feel like it's more of a bass sound. So focusing on the main sounds first. My method of mixing and a lot of other people's methods of mixing are to focus on 3 or 4 main elements. Those main elements are most of the time your kick, your snare, your hi-hat, and your bass. And those 4 main elements, or you might have your, if your song is more focused on something else, that's totally fine too. You might have your kick, your bass, and a specific synth. But the 4 main elements that you really pop are those 4. You want your kick to pop, you want your hat, and you want your snare so you can carry the rhythm really well. And then you have your bass, of course, that's going to mix with the kick as well. And then you kind of go on to your secondary, which would be your hooks, melodies, your main ideas, your main synths that are going to also be loud. But if you have too many that are loud, you're going to have too many interfering instruments. So with this, I have my kick, I have these really strong hats right here, and then I have this synth here. Oh. And I want it to be loud enough that you can hear it, but not loud enough that it's going to drown out the song. But if it's too far in the back, it's going to sound muddy. If it's too forward in the mix, it's going to be too much attention being dragged to it. So I like where it's sitting right now. It carries the groove, it carries the rhythm, but it's not taking too much power away from the track, and it's not too far back in the mix. Next, I would start to think of 1 or 2 other elements that need to be loud, maybe a lead or an ARP or something like that. But if I have to be careful and selective because not everything can be loud in a mix, or else nothing is loud in a mix. So we need contrast. We need things that are quiet as well as loud. Okay. We had these vocals here. Our effects. Turn up some reverb on the effects, and I'm going to take it off the send a little bit. Take the send of, so this is sending out to this return track for reverb, but I want to have my own reverb on it so I can control it a bit more. There we go, that sounds a bit better. That sounds a bit too loud, but it's also maxed out there, so I'm gonna try that again. That's better. Can't believe how simple this layout is. Usually my tracks are much messier. So this is the last element that I'm gonna be bringing in that's gonna be loud, is these really melodic plucked sounds that I have going on here, and it's a very simple synth that I made on its own without any effects. This off. And then I turn the effects back on. Oops. It sounds much nicer. It's on its own, it kind of sounds soft and not very upfront and in your face, but it works with the song. And when you add these effects to it, it makes it much more of a melodic kind of carrying sound that's more of a texture and not such a lead, but it works really well in this track. So I'm going to turn this up, and then I have this sending in, I have this sent to the, there we go, the side chain, so the synths, but I also have it sent to this other return track, which is just a delay. And I'm going to put an EQ on there to clean up the delay. The reason I did that is so that we can have the mostly dry signal going into the master from the side chain, and we're not putting in too wet of a signal to the master, so we're not losing too much of that power. And I'll probably do some stereo processing as well on this channel. So I'm going to put this to lead, ARP, return track. Okay. I get to put this in stereo and see how it sounds. And I'm going to take the bass back in, and let's take a listen. Sounds really good so far. And we have tons of headroom here. We're just hitting -7, maybe -6.5, and I still have 3 decibels plus. I have about 6 more decibels of room that I could push instruments to get more headroom because of the way that I've set it up. So I'm just making sure that I'm not pushing too hot. Okay, now I'm going to start to EQ. Oh, I have my clap as well. I didn't turn my clap up. Okay, I'm going to EQ my clap. And I want to turn on my spectrum analyzer. So I use a spectrum analyzer all the time to watch what my track is doing, make sure that it's not going too far in one frequency. So you'll see right away what I mean. So I'll play the track. So for example, right here, it looks pretty high. Over here looks a little high. These are just areas that I want to pay attention to, and even though maybe I can't hear them necessarily, I can see that there's a buildup of frequencies, and I can go in and make sure that I'm not overdoing something in a certain area. Okay. Take a little bit of that low end out. There's another problem area here. I don't really like that hitting noise. Right there. I don't like that. So I'm just going to take a little bit out and boost a little bit above it. Okay. Maybe turn a little bit of low end back up. Oops. Okay. Go to the hat now. Let's EQ this one. Of course, we are always high passing our low end out. We don't need this information. We don't need this. We don't need all this information down here. So I'm going to cut it out. It's just going to take up headroom. We don't want that. I can see a really sharp frequency there, that really, really bright line right there, and I can see it in the span here, this frequency right here, 6.65 hertz. I'm going to take that down a slight amount, just until it's a little bit quieter. I'm gonna make this super narrow, just like a precision cut. Because we don't need that frequency taking up our headroom. We don't need it peaking and taking up, throwing our compressors off a little bit. It's just a really prominent frequency that we don't really need. But before and after is almost indistinguishable, but it is peaking a little bit. I don't need that. Make it a little bit punchier. Push this up maybe a decibel. Okay, let's check out the other hat and compare. Turn this off. And let's compare these two side by side. Let's see if we can make some room. So they're hitting pretty much the same area. This is a little lower and this is a little higher. So what I'm going to do is take out a bit of the low end of the higher one, which is this one. About 10,000 hertz, so we got about 10,000 here. And then I'm going to, just boost the low end a little bit, just very slight. It doesn't sound like when I mix to mono it's losing anything, so I'll go back to stereo. It doesn't sound like they're clashing too much in my opinion, so I don't really need to EQ too much. Let's check one more time, just to make sure. Still sounds punchy, still sounds full. So let's go back to the next one, the shakers. Same information area, very strong. Let's compare that with the hats. So what I'm going to do now is I probably already did it. No, I haven't. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sidechain the shakers to the hats a little bit. So when the shakers are hitting and the hat hits, the hat is going to essentially turn down the volume of the shakers. So let's go ahead and do that. So I have my side chain set to my hat. So whenever this hat hits, this compressor is going to compress these shakers very quickly by about 3 decibels. See how it punches through a little bit better? Great. Check the EQ on this percussive element. It's got some low end in it that I didn't want. Okay. Sounds okay in mono. We're losing a bit of power when we have it in stereo. There we go. If I invert the phase, sounds a little bit different. Could be wrong, but I guess it probably doesn't make much or any of a difference if I'm just inverting the phase here. It would have to be in context with the rest of the mix, but I don't know, it sounds better to me, so that's interesting, but maybe it's just me. Looks like I boosted that. Okay, and go into our bass. Whoops. So this one I've already EQ'd a little bit, taking some of the high end out, taking some of that low end out so I can make room for my sub. Let's go ahead and take that out too, because I believe we have this bass here at 63. So I could turn this one down at 63, which I'm gonna do. What is this one at? 84. That's got a harmonic there. So that is adding a bit of that saturation, but it could cause issues. But it sounds all right to me, so I'm going to leave it for now. I might have to come back to it later. And then I have a Camel Crusher on just a little bit of distortion. Let's turn that off and hear how it sounds. Okay, and then let's go to our bass bus and let's compress this all together and see how it sounds. To a fairly hard ratio, maybe 3-ish. Do another limiter because I want to catch the peaks that I've created. Doesn't look like I created any, which is good. Give it that slow attack, fast release so that I can really punch through. And I do have another sound that I want to try out on this. So this is a new plugin that I purchased called, oh, I can't remember what it's called. It's one of these new ones here. Renegade. I bought 5 new plugins. Yes, it is this one. I bought 5 new plugins from SoundSpot. They had a sale on it, so I bought 5 of these, and I don't know which one's which yet because they all have really interesting names like Oracle, Renegade, Halo Cyan, or something like that. So it's hard to remember which one's which. It's not obvious, like, you know, multi-band compressor. So I'll turn this on, and let's turn this up and see how it sounds. I'm going to turn it up just a little bit, see how it sounds in the mix. It's essentially just a bass enhancer. It makes a stereo width a little bit without causing phase issues, and it adds a bit of like this tube or this distortion, this warmth saturation that makes it stand out a little bit more. I'm going to try it in the mix. Very subtle, but it adds a little bit of flavor to it. Great. Okay, I'm pretty much done the first mix sound that I would really consider the first mix sound. I would go in and do some routing to the, like, for example, I don't have this routed to any reverb, so I'm just going to route that in there. Same for this one. And I'm going to turn this reverb up a little bit. There we go. Much better. Okay, it's probably sound much better now. Got these on reverb and this one. Turn this down a little bit. Okay. So listen one more time in stereo. Okay, so it's sounding pretty good so far. I can hear the hats really present. I think I could probably turn my kick and bass up a little bit. I'm going to route this to my synth reverb. So this one is going to send a bit of signal to a reverb return. So now I can hear only the return track. I'm gonna put a little bit more into that because, oh, and there is not a reverb on there, so I'm gonna throw a reverb on. I'm gonna put the stereo separation up a little bit as well, because this is pretty much the only synth that I'm sending to this, so I can put some stereo separation on. I'm not too worried about it being too much. I'm gonna turn this up, and let's turn up the wet a little bit more, because I can send quite a bit to that. The reverb tail is a bit long though. I'm gonna turn that down a little bit. Maybe the wet a little bit too. That's fine like that. Okay. Next, I want to, before I finish this off, I'm going to add another side chain here. So this is routed to this track, and then I'm going to put a side chain from it so that when it's playing, it's going to turn down when it hears the original signal. So you can see that when the original signal comes through, it's going to turn down this so that the delayed signal is being squished by the compressor to make room for when this plays. So when this plays, it's not being affected by the sound of this return. So we're gonna get that punchiness of the original sound, even though it's not that punchy, we're making room for it in this affected wet signal. Very subtle, but it's something that's gonna make a bit of room in the mix for this sound. And we could do that to this reverb as well, but I don't think we need to. And let's hear how it sounds. Oops. That is off for some reason. Why is that off? Oh my goodness, I keep on not pressing that button. Make sure automation clips are all lined up. One of these automation clips is wrong, this one right here. I'm just gonna make sure it's only that section that it's wrong, which it looks like it is. Oh, maybe you're here too. Okay, let me fix that. And over here. Okay. Oh, that side still needs to be fixed. There's adaptive grid on, so I have to zoom right in. Make sure it's the right level. And it looks like this is totally off. This should be back here, like this. Right. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to let you take a full listen to the track if you'd like. And I'm going to sit back and I'm going to turn my speakers on and enjoy it in the speakers and not just on my headphones. So if you enjoyed the video and you are on this on a YouTube channel and not my Patreon, or you can definitely subscribe, make sure to like it. And I really appreciate you checking out the channel. I appreciate you watching the video. I really hope that you learned something, and I hope that you will be watching future videos of this as well, as I'm going to keep making them. I really enjoy making them for you, and I really enjoy helping everybody. So thank you so much, and enjoy the track.